Well, let's get this going. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to walk and talk with us, Mad Dog Jones. Really, really appreciate it. And I was thinking yesterday, like, how can I best prepare for this? And I'm like, I'm just gonna walk down to the museum. And they had a exhibit going on where it was called Living Art, talking about how technology has kind of changed art from the 1970s on. And I like starting at the beginning. I like understanding kind of how the Mad Dog Jones today kind of started. So, first question I was thinking, like, was there a specific piece of art or an artist that made you think when you're younger, like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to be an artist.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I guess first off, like I come from a family of artists. My dad is a stained glass artist. So our family business was doing like stained glass church windows when I was growing up. So that was kind of the world that I was raised in. So always being around an artistic family was definitely the kind of the original leg up. And you know, some people come from like financially successful families. I don't have that. I come from a artistically rich family. And so I feel like I've just been, learning about color, shape, form, and all that stuff ever since I can remember. So just definitely a heavily like art influenced household that I grew up in. Um, and I know this is like a really like popular thing to be like, that's the thing that like changed my like artistic brain. But when I was probably about like 6 years old, I think my brother found a cassette copy of Akira and pretty much watching Akira as a small child growing up. And that just was the thing that changed my art brain, what was possible, how cool something could look. Um, that was definitely the first like major thing that I remember. That and Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, I would say. And then moving into Spawn as well. I've still got a stack of the first 30 Spawn comics that I look at for style references all the time. I'm absolutely obsessed with them.
That's incredible. Yeah, I was just looking at, I wasn't familiar with Akira, but taking a look at the
Oh,
cover that they have on Wikipedia, it instantly clicks. And you've
it,
got the Japanese influence, you've got the cars and the speed and the movement. So I
yeah.
think things are starting to click a little bit here more for
Uh,
me.
yeah, for those who've seen Akira, you already know. And for those who haven't, just do yourself a favor and just like sink in and watch it. It is completely hand drawn, came out in 1988. Um, it's like every cell is painted in that thing. And the absolute grind and dedication for that thing to look as good as it looks, it's just, it's beyond, it's beyond. It's a truly, mind-bending achievement. And, then there's the mangas that came before it. And it's really just a masterclass in dynamic, it, the, the movement, composition, and stylization is what all of like modern cyberpunk is taken from. I think like between like Blade Runner, like, obviously you have to give Blade Runner a huge amount of respect in that thing. And then I guess have you seen the film Jodorowsky's Dune?
I have not. I'm adding both of these to my list.
Yeah, so Jodorowsky's Dune is really really interesting, and this is something I watched as an adult. But in hindsight, it's a really fascinating piece of history. Alejandro Jodorowsky is a really bizarre Mexican art house filmmaker, and he makes like really up movies, like they're beyond insane. Like the Holy Mountain is probably his most famous movie, and like it's it's art core, and like I can't even condone the movie. It's just beyond madness. But like he's an artist. Like to make Holy Mountain, they had like 30 people all do acid in the desert in Mexico for like 3 months and then like started filming it. And it's just like a massive acid trip with some Mexican guy in the 70s or late 60s that had $1 million to make a movie. So it's like, it's
Yeah,
truly,
that's something.
it's truly insane. And then he wanted to make Dune before David Lynch made Dune, but it never got made. But he's the one that brought so much of the team together that would then go and make Blade Runner, that would then go and make Aliens. So in Jodorowsky's mission to make essentially Star Wars before Star Wars, to make Dune, he found Geiger and he found all these crazy set designers and he found all these people and brought them together to try to make Dune, but then it fell through. And then David Lynch got it and made a very mediocre version of it. R.I.P. David Lynch, still one of the greats, but that's not his greatest movie. So it's just, you have all these kind of like historical pillars in the cyberpunk digital art, um, anime world. And I've always just kind of been diving and learning and, you know, iterating and pivoting and trying to see like, where can I add? Where can I grow? Where can I like leave a fingerprint on this like TV screen of art?
That's incredible. I mean, I just have been writing down all of these movies and things that I do not know. So thank you for that. And
Oh,
I think
anytime.
yeah, I think it's really interesting just for the type of art that you're kind of going for, what you're trying to convey. It feels very like if before like the Ukiyo-e era, they were thinking about like what the future could look like. I feel like this is kind of like the cyberpunk, and I've been really into woodblock printmaking and Ukiyo-e, so the fleeting kind of feeling that you're capturing in your works feels very similar to how Hokusai or Hiroshige was doing creating their designs back in the day. Like, is that something that you're actively thinking about? Are you
Yeah.
like,
So actually I'm working with, Adachi Hanga in Tokyo right now, and we've actually made a woodblock print. I'm not sure what's been publicly announced yet, but we've made a woodblock print of one of my famous works.
what?
Um, and it's traditional, like fully traditional. I think it's like, I don't know exactly how many blocks, but I think it's like probably like 20 different blocks to make it. And, it's going to be, in April. I'm just not sure what's been publicly announced yet, so I just don't want to like say anything I'm not supposed to say yet. But it's going to be going up in a famous museum in April. They're going to be displayed.
Holy shit, that
Yeah,
is so cool. Because yeah, when I'm doing my research, I look at your work, I'm
yeah,
like this is the next extension of
yeah.
that. So I think it's
Well,
really
actually,
cool to
I'm
kind of
just
go
gonna
back into
say
time.
I'm gonna say it's from Replicator, which is kind of like like which really fascinated me about wood blocks was like it's the original form of replication. It's like the original printing press before there was printing presses. So I really wanted to like tell the story of Replicator with woodblock. So that's kind of what's happening there. So really, really awesome.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And Replicator is this incredible project that Mad Dog Jones did a few years ago, where using blockchain, using Web3 technology, it kind of unlocks what can be done with art. And I think as an artist living in this age of crazy technology, like using these new tools that you have, like when Hokusai got access to like Prussian blue from Europe, he was able to unlock a whole world of landscapes, and one of those became the Great Wave. So I think whenever artists have the ability to use these new tools, it's super cool to see what they come up with. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and I am very, very excited to kind of see how that shapes up once the time is right.
Yeah, it's exactly it. Because like the new, like everybody in this space, like you know, Dean Talvier and Arson in here and other people I know not quite as well, but um, like we all know what new art comes with technology. What new ideas and iterations. Like look at Jack Butcher, look at Sam Spratt. Like the ideas that come out of technology is massive. Like this summer, this is kind of like a silly thing, but like I still think it's really cool. I go on like an annual muskie fishing trip with a group of like nine of my like old high school buddies every fall. And um I made an entire D&D campaign for them this summer. And using my Hyper Phantom AI model, I like formatted all these images for characters, and like I made like a whole bunch of different fish that you could catch. Like me and my friend made like a new um like a bunch of new D&D mechanics for like a fishing adventure called Dungeons and Sturgeons. Anyways, just for fun. But I made like 100 unique cards with like unique art, and I designed this whole like card game in like a weekend essentially. And like, we all went out there and we all had a great time. And, the art is connected to me because it's trained on my work, my Hyper Phantom model. So like we go there, and like that wouldn't have been like I never would have built that without these new like AI tools. And with that, it like, hey, what can one person do? What crazy idea do you have? Because I think so much great art comes from single authorship. I think like a lot of great art can be made through collaboration, but often collaboration is like dilution of one person's vision. And so there's kind of a give and take when you're bringing in different people to do things. Cause it's like, hey, okay, I'm going to bring in a different artist. Well, they're like, well, that artist's ego starts getting involved, and like it slowly starts like diverting away from your one idea. And I think the best art is often single authorship. The best movies are when like, let Denny Villeneuve cook, like, like, um, who's the Inception director guy?
Nolan?
Nolan. Like Nolan isn't like, hey, like guys, like let's crowdsource this fucking twist. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, totally. I think
yeah,
Steve Jobs said it's like you don't see statues of committees.
yeah. And I'm not a big fan of even the concept of statues in general, but yeah, you don't. And well, to be honest, I think like the things that for things like. It's funny because like in art, single authorship is so cool, but then in politics, it's like really not. It's like kind of
That's
kind of
true.
kind of funny like that, like where we put those value judgments on art and politics, because like science is kind of the opposite, right? Like science is at its core about multiple people bringing all kinds of views in and actually finding a truth, but a metaphysical truth, art and beauty doesn't need to be like true. It can be a lie. It can be a distortion. And often that's what is the beauty in it. So it's interesting how, these different, sectors, parameters kind of like flow different with that. But,
Yeah, no, that's
that's just,
fascinating.
and, the tools are, are everything, like, I think, I don't want to say great artists, but like successful artists, maybe like will if you put any pile of stuff in front of me, if you put me into any environment and you were just like create art, I feel confident that I would find a way to do something. Like if I needed to just like, assemble, like, I've done like snow sculptures. I've done like, sticker collages, whatever it is, design a shoe, like even like make, like organize this toolbox so it looks like a cool, still life, you know, these are things that I think successful artists like look at things constantly from that lens. Like, what can I do to make this moment more compelling? And that's kind of what I'm constantly thinking about.
100%. And yeah, I think artists, I mean, and the reason why artists are so special is that they're willing to put themselves out there and put something together through their own lens. Like you see the world way differently than everybody else, but maybe some people aren't willing to kind of put themselves out there and kind of shape the world the way that they see fit. And I think with a lot of your work, and I was listening to some interviews where you take photographs and then you kind of stitch them together and kind of make this new world out of this old one, but we're seeing it through Mad Dog Jones's lens. So like you're able to kind of distill this in a new way. And I think this goes back to one of your phrases that you used, the ideas are the currency.
Yeah.
This is in a world where you have all the tooling, you can do whatever you want, but do you have the creative mind to make it happen? And I think that phrase that you put together, I don't know when you said it, but I think it becomes more and more true every single day. Like the finite resource that we have is creativity. And that's why I think artists will only become more and more important as time goes on.
Yeah. So let's go into the on cyber room. I know everybody's not in here, so I won't like, um, exactly harp on it, but I would also say hop in if you can. I'm walking over here to this piece with the, Toyota 86 Truno in it. And this was an early artwork of mine. And in my early days, I was just figuring out my style. And what I love doing is collaging. So before I had an iPad, I would just National Geographics, just cut and paste random stuff and put it together. I loved chopping and sampling. And that goes back to my early music production days too. Um, my dad's record collection, I would go in and sample it into like, I don't know, if anybody remembers the days, if there's any music producers here, Acid Music, that was like an old DAW back in the day. And I would just, take my CDs, take my dad's records, just sample stuff. And I loved sampling. I loved chopping, all the like, 90s hip hop era stuff like that. Fatboy Slim, Prodigy, Daft Punk, all those great artists come from the sampling generation, the sampling era. So that's how I started doing Mad Dog Jones's works. And so I'm just this piece here is just like sampled images. and then I chop them together and recontextualize them. And then those things, like, you can really see I'm still developing my style in this piece. Like, I would never keep those like black lines inside the car windows like that anymore. I would have the snow on the hills way more defined. Like, I'm really still finding the weight of my pen, and I'm still finding my color palettes, and I'm still finding there's still so much that I'm looking for. Like, I can criticize this piece all I want, but it's still cool. But then if you walk over to the other side of the room to this pink piece, and a lot of people will know this piece. It's it's the one with the Tory on top, and two representations of a castle on either side. So on my first trip to Japan, I just took pictures of everything. And this is Osaka Castle on either side of the Torii, and that Torii was a famous Torii in the I don't remember what the bay was called, but it's in the tidal water of outside of Hiroshima. I'm dyslexic. I have trouble with pronunciation sometimes. Um, so the first building in the foreground is like one building. Then the second kind of layer is like another building. Then the third layer is like other buildings. And then I have the castles, and those castles it's the same photo of a castle, but I just like flipped it left and right, then shaded it differently. And then the Tory there. So I'm just like grabbing photos and then just chopping them out on my iPad and then rearranging them and then recoloring them and then putting them all back together. And that's like a function of the iPad, really. Like, I used to have a Wacom tablet, and you could have done this with a Wacom tablet, but the speed of like being able to like draw directly on the screen with the iPad like really upped my output ability, and that made me able to create these, hyper detailed images. So I think when you first start like taking on these more complicated projects, they seem daunting. But then once you knock one out, you're like, well, if I can do one every 10 days, then that's 30 a year. And then, you go on, and then all of a sudden you've got 400 crazy complicated works. And it's a pretty cool feeling to get to execute these ideas. And then, so if you go one over here, this is kind of like a still life. Anybody listening, it's like one of my images where there's like an iPod on the screen, and like you can see first person view, some hands writing in a sketchbook. And, this is just me, like, taking pictures of random stuff on my desk and then illustrating them, copying them into this weird surreal scene. I believe this piece was originally made for a Benny Blanco single. Um, I think, yeah, that's Benny Blanco, I believe, art on there. Early in my Instagram days, I got a contract to do 10 pieces of art for, is it Universal? I forget which label it is, but I did art for like Benny Blanco, Calvin Harris, Billie Eilish, Eminem, a bunch of people. And I would like, there's a handful of us like Instagram artists. I think, Victor Mascaro was one of them too. And pretty much like when Universal would do a release, we would all like get a heads up about it, and we'd all like make like a piece of art and just like drop it like pseudo unofficially on Instagram, just as like kind of viral promo for music, which was kind of cool because we didn't have to get it approved by the artists, which was awesome because if anybody here's worked with musicians, I've worked in the music industry for a long time. It's like artists are like so like tough to work with because they have such a tight vision for what their works are. I don't think there's anything else in here from that project. No. So it's really interesting, but really I got to have a lot of fun with a lot of those projects. The first like ramen bowl I did was a Billie Eilish one. If you look on my Instagram, you can see it back there, and there's like this like Billie Eilish's face is in the ramen bowl. Later on, I did Dead Ramen, which is like a pretty famous piece of mine. It was a collaboration with Dead Mouse, um, who is always beefing with everybody. Oh man, it's funny because like when all that Blau stuff happened, I'm like, I know both of these guys, and yeah, petty people out there. Shout out to Blau, man. Um, he's a hardworking dude, and honestly, like Deadmau5 is a passionate guy, and this is what happens when you bring these intersections of art and technology and politics into one spot too. You get passionate voices, and the last thing we want is a world where artists aren't expressing themselves passionately, and we all want it to be respectful too, and we all want it to be balanced, but you know this is art. This is the land of no boundaries. This is freedom of expression, and we live in kind of a crazy timeline right now, and I think we as artists and collectors need to um find solace in art, in good art, and we need to make sure that art is there to you know counterbalance um the wild existential dread that the world is foisting upon us. Every like every war, like like Picasso wouldn't have made Guernica had Franco not been a absolutely horrific dictator in Spain, and that horrific act of Franco in Spain led to what I think is the greatest piece of modern contemporary, I don't know, whatever you call it now, art. And I think that is like one of the kind of exciting challenges about making art in this world now is how do you speak truth to power with art, or is your art a place for people to feel seen, or is your art a place for people to feel a moment of reprieve and calm? um, those are all kind of questions that I'm constantly asking myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that I'm thinking about all the time. And I think I wrote this in my journal last year, but it's like artists tell, like, art is the diary of humanity. I mean, it started with like paintings on cave walls up till today, where you're making art with iPads, but it tells the story of humanity. And without kind of using this alchemy of turning maybe these not so great events into beautiful, powerful pieces, I think a world without art would be so flat and it just wouldn't work. So I think as artists, and just thinking that an artist isn't going to speak their mind, isn't going to look through the world in their very specific lens and be willing to say it, I think is just, you don't know how artists operate. So
Yeah,
I think it's important that everybody does share their view, and we don't kind of get swept into this where everyone's too scared to say something, and then we kind of go down this path where maybe we don't want to end up going. But one thing
yeah,
that I did want to ask for these two works on the left wall here is, like you're mentioning, you stitched together so many different elements, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel busy and overwhelming. I did some audio production in college with like FL Studio and Ableton, and you just try to layer on just more and more and more, and then it just feels muddy and just it doesn't work. Like,
Well,
how do you kind of strike that balance between kind of having a lot there, but still having it feel palatable to the eyes or the ears?
it's interesting you bring that up because so I come from the world of music production. I was in a band for years in Toronto, and I kind of lived the music life for like 10 to 2019, and I started Mad Dog Jones in 2017 when I decided I wanted to pivot out of music. And so I started like kind of hustling art on Instagram to get out of the music industry because it was just too tiring. I didn't want to be a touring musician. After I toured, I decided I don't want to tour. Um, but what's interesting, the big difference between visual art and music is when you look at something, you can close your eyes or you can look away. But music is visceral and can hurt you. Music can be uncomfortable in a different way than visual art can be. Now, visual art can be very uncomfortable. Obviously, you could look at like a really sad photograph, you know, but you can always turn your head or close your eyes. When you layer too much in a song, it creates a cacophony and it creates, you know, dissonance and stuff like that. And you kind of can't escape that dissonance. You can't close your ears. You know what I mean? You have to physically leave that space. With art, it's not as high stakes with layering. So you can keep layering details to no upper limit in visual art as long as you keep a compositional balance to that. With with music, like if you're layering and layering and layering, you need the precision of an orchestra to do that. You need the precision of a symphony to actually bring in 36 layers of music. Now, I know there's digital production where people have 36 layers in it, but it's like you're you're playing a really dangerous game as any amateur or professional music producer will tell you. Like, go listen to a Mike Dean beat, go listen to a Dr. Dre beat, you know, go listen to Timbaland, like any of these famous producers, Daft Punk, whatever your flavor is, the the skill in music is often holding back too many layers. And with visual, you can keep stacking layers upon layers of layers, but you're just constantly reshuffling how those layers balance. So you can create really detailed works as long as you're also finding balance in those layers. And often, like, uh, what's a good one to look at here? Like, I think the one of the car over here, this is one of the dead mouse pieces. If we look at this one with the car, there's like it feels like there's lots of layers and complexity, but you actually have quite a bit of flat foreground space for the car. So you do have this reprieve at the bottom. And then the back layer of buildings, they're set so far back that there is a faded softness there. And then there's a layer of, you know, really complex stuff on the layer of the car and right behind the car. But as you're perceiving it, it's like one band of complexity where your eyes really go. And then it's kind of like when you look at a forest of trees, your thought isn't, oh my God, like look how complex this is. It's like, look how beautiful and serene this is. And that's often what I think about. Like a photo of a forest is inherently infinitely complex. It's beyond complexity, but it's not overwhelming when you look at a group of trees. And that's because those trees, you know, if you take nature photography, like, you know, you have your subject in the foreground and the complexity can turn into a texture. And when you turn a complexity into a texture, then it still brings like this kind of like whimsy and wonder, but it's not overwhelming you with just pure details. So it's so much of that is, um, like if you think about like billboards and advertising, I think is a great way to look at it. You know, you have text, you want your text to be readable. You don't want the text to be washed out. You don't want it to be muddy. You don't want it to be like in a jungle of other things. You want the text to stand out on top of whatever image you're using behind it. You want, if it's a billboard, you want people to be able to read it in X amount of time. You want to get a message across, and you have to, like, if I were to put text over top of my images, that can be really complicated because, like, how do you read that text without the text getting washed out, you know? Or how do you put text on it without, just like crushing whatever you have behind it? So it's often, a game of balance. And I think that that is really where, like, physical collaging is a really great exercise. If anybody has like kids and they want to teach their kids about art and composition, collaging is such a fun way to do it because you can go and cut out random shapes, whales, eyeballs, whatever things that you find in magazines. And then you put them down on your page and then you shuffle them and you slide them and you go like, well, maybe this could be here, or maybe this could be here, or like, oh, this is here. I got a blue thing over here. Well, maybe I need a counterbalance blue thing on this side. There's too much on that side. And it's like weight, and every color has a different weight too. So like, if you have like some dark blue on one side and no blue on the other side, well, you could put a light blue on the other side because that holds more visual, um, um, gravity than the dark blue. So like, oh, now your blues are balanced, but you used a little piece of light blue here and a bigger piece of dark blue there. So there's all these different ways that you can balance images with color and light, and just through practice you slowly learn how to do that. And like if we're looking at this dead mouse picture here with the car, like on the left hand side there's a lot of blue on those buildings in the main first level of the first floor of the buildings there. But if you look to the right, there's just like a little splice of blue that kind of comes in on that right side. And that's me, subtly balancing the blues within that layer. And same with like the little orange windows. I think windows are a great way to create like a little bit of color balance. You can just, like, that in the top left corner, you see like that single red window. And, I don't even know if I'm consciously doing this, but like I'm constantly, okay, well, there's red windows on the right hand side. So maybe I just need like one red window over here. Cause if that red window wasn't over there, you'd kind of have this kind of dark blue kind of void, but let's just pop a red window in there. So, the other thing I use for balancing a ton, and this is like secret sauce, is the pylons. Like, like you got like a space, you're like, oh, like, what do I put here? It's like, well, just throw a pylon in there and it can just break up a space. It can just break up a little open area and give you like a little shot of color where you might need it. And like the pylons in my pieces are like very meticulously placed. Like I assure you, every single time I put a pylon in somewhere, it's been well thought out and moved and slid around, and it's just like a very accurate little spot that I always choose to put those little guys.
That's fascinating. Yeah, on the video, I've been kind of scrolling around. I think will look really good on the recording. I'm
Um,
curious
I'm
how
just
you. Oh,
just
sorry.
looking
Go
out
ahead.
into the crowd here. Just what up, PlayStation? Josh, man, I love you, man. I see Joff out there. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for coming and listening. Hero, nice, everybody. Emlo, hey, how's it going, guys? Love to see you guys here. And I don't know, do we have a section where we like answer questions or anything? What's the flow of the space? Sorry, Nick. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of take it wherever you want. I just wanted to kind of touch on your love of racing and cars. I feel like that's one area that we haven't hit on yet. But then with the
Yeah,
remaining time, we can definitely do some Q&A.
sweet, cool. Okay. Yeah, I think um, growing up as a kid, I'm sure a bunch of people can relate, and some people can't relate. I was a bunny ears kid, and for like a younger generation, you don't even know what bunny ears are, but my TV just had an antenna. I lived out in the country, and I got two channels. And in Canada, that was CTV and CBC. And like sometimes you would get TVO, and like sometimes you get the French channel reception. But so essentially you just like get whatever this like random antenna picks up. And as a kid, Jacques Villeneuve was famous race car driver. And I just remember watching him, watching Michael Schumacher back in the day, and watching these F1 races would just pop on TV. And these cars and these helmets were just like, the iconic fucking Marlboro fucking designs. Like, God damn it. Could you have a more iconic, simple logo and car design? So seeing that stuff back in the day without even realizing it, it like registered in me so fucking deeply. And it's just so, um, there's such high stakes in racing and such high technology. So you have this kinetic motion that is just beyond complexity, like how these cars actually function. The inside, the outside, the wings, the wheels, everything. And you have this danger, and the helmet like is this coalescing point of all that. You get your crazy graphic design, you get logo design, you get graphic design, you get shape and form, and you get this like hyperdynamic movement. And so like I remember when I kind of pivoted full time into doing the art, me and my manager were talking. He's like, like who's what are your like dream collabs? Like what are your people that you'd want to work with? And I gravitated to people with helmets. And the first one was Lewis Hamilton. I was like, if I could do a helmet for Lewis, that would be just the absolute peak dream career move. And like by a stroke of absolute, like, godly luck, I got to do that. And that was amazing. And it led to all kinds of opportunities in motorsport, getting to work with Valentino Rossi. And one of the pictures up on the wall in the on-cyber room is a picture of me standing with the MotoGP team, the VR46 team, with the bikes I designed and the suits I designed. And then the other person that I wanted to collaborate with was Daft Punk, and unfortunately they've disbanded. So I don't know if that's gonna ever be able to happen. But these the motorsports, the helmets, the technology, and I'm not even like a motorsports expert. Like I couldn't fix your carburetor. I'm not like a big technical car guy or anything like that. Um, but the the aesthetic, and going back to Akira, really, like, you watch Akira and it's these crazy motorcycle moments, and you have like Nuck, when you watch it, I'm excited because when you see actually just like the opening scene essentially is the unequivocally the greatest motorcycle car chase scene ever put to screen. And what's fun about watching Akira too is you're going to be like, oh, that's where that shot's taken from. Like there's so many perspectives and shots that were pioneered in that. And so like the idea of the motorcycle, the danger of it, and the iconic Akira bike, I have a model of it in my house right now, is such a cool vessel for design in the bike's design itself and in the livery. And so, yeah, motorsport has always just kind of been one of those things where you look at it and you go like, there's so much, there's so many different ways I can take this, and getting to put my own stamp on it has been like just kind of one of my, you know, great joys in life.
That's incredible. And yeah, I think I'm gonna watch Akira tonight, and I will report back. And I'm
Dude,
excited to see all of the, I mean, influences that definitely that you took as a kid that just have been radiating throughout your work ever since.
just take screenshots and like just give me like a live can you give me like either text me or give me like a live Twitter thread of you watching it being like holy fuck, because it is it's you're gonna love it. It's one of the greatest.
Got no plans tonight, so now I do. So we'll
Beauty,
do.
beauty.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we've got like 10 minutes left. So yeah, I would love to open it up to questions. And I mean, before we do, thank you again so much for taking the time to do this. This has been such a joy. And yeah, big thank you to everyone here in the spaces for chatting with us, for hanging in there, walking through the gallery with us on oncyber. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, just the reason that I do these walk and talks, not only just personally because I just love talking with artists, but elevating artists telling their stories, like I was mentioning before, I think will only become more and more important. So thank you
Yeah.
again, Mad Dog Jones, for doing this.
Well, hey, Josh, I don't know if you're actively listening right now, but PlayStation, if you feel like coming up for a second, I'd love to just I think there's a little touch of an AI conversation we could have here too. I don't know if you're free to chat at all. Or if anybody else has any questions they want to hop up and ask. Nuck, is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Feel free to raise
Um,
your hand and I'll bring you on up.
yeah. So either way, think that the other thing that I've been really into doing lately has been my hyper phantom model, and I've been building it with titles. Shout out to titles. Um, Soren, just such a cool dude. I've thrown up a few early experiments on rodeo with it. Um, and I know PlayStation uses rodeo as well. Hey, what's up, Josh? Yeah, yeah, I can
We
hear
can
you.
hear you. How you doing?
I'm doing this from my desktop, so it's usually I
No,
do this from my phone, so hopefully this works.
sound quality is great. You sound good. Yeah, so Josh, I guess like me and you have been experimenting with AI. Um,
Yeah.
would I think maybe I don't know if you feel this way, but like it's almost like an unexpected new relationship. I never like before AI art became an option, using AI in my practice became an option. I never really thought about it. And now it feels like this huge part of my practice. And I think I'd have to call it a love-hate relationship. And maybe love-hate isn't exactly the right way to frame it. Maybe it's like, lust and fear. I don't know what dichotomy I want to put to it, but I was wondering, like, how are you kind of like grappling with this new era of AI art in your practice?
Yeah, you love hate, love that. Um, I've been making work for 30 years, and um, I first started writing code to make art back in 1994, 1995. So I'm the old guy. Um, but I don't see it as much different than what I've been doing for the past 30 years, right? So like I've been writing code to generate stuff based on certain parameters. So yeah, this past year I really deep dived into stable diffusion, comfy UI, writing stuff in Python, and I just see it as a tool, I gave a talk at a um, AI conference in Spain, and I just thought, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And as many people want to complain about, oh, this, that, stealing. I think you're only looking at a certain like portion of what AI can do. Specifically, like if you're using Comfy UI, like it has so much like Photoshop tools like built into it that I find myself like, not only am I generating work based on my own work. I mean, what the audience doesn't know is that me and Mad Dog have been passing files back and forth. And I've just been showing him some of the stuff that I've been doing, and he's been showing some of the stuff that he's been doing. And that's been like, really, really exciting. But I think it's like, if you're just doing text to image, where you're just like, if you're using something like Midjourney, which, yes, has been trained on a specific amount of data, and you're just typing text trying to get to the thing that you're trying to get to, then you're missing, I think, the bigger picture of AI. And I think we both have been going down this road of like, how do I use this tool to make my work better? And
Yeah.
I have fallen deep down that rabbit hole. And I even started like a little side project on Rodeo, which I've been kind of really hush hush about. I haven't really told anybody or promoted it, but I'm using these really intense workflow and programming environments to generate something that's like far beyond what I've been able to do, just with code. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's such a vast and open way of making things. And here's the thing, and Mad Dog can relate to this. Imagine you get a brief, and let's just use, Lewis Hamilton for an example. Okay. What would you do if you just said, hey, I got this job for Lewis Hamilton and I want to rapid prototype like a bunch of ideas. And so I'm going to use AI that's trained on my work. So it knows how, Mad Dog makes things. You can throw in a prompt, you can throw in your images, and you can say, hey man, I'm going to go to bed. And when I wake up in the morning, I want 1,000 images that will then inspire something that I might do manually, right? So Mad Dog can
It's
wake up in the morning, he can see
literally
all these
my life.
1,000
Yeah.
images, you know what I mean? And go like, yeah, that thing is cool, that thing is cool, that thing is cool. Great. Now, now I can go through my craft and implement the thing that made me, the name that I am. But I'm just using AI as a way to expand the sandbox. And I don't know how anyone couldn't see AI as being extremely beneficial in that regard.
Yeah. And one of the things I would say to people, artists or non-artists exploring AI, um, image to image is like really the way to go. Now, like everybody's going to have their own practice. That doesn't mean you can't create interesting things with text to image. But for me, I'll take a photograph, I'll edit a photograph, or I'll take a piece of my art that I've already made and I'll image to image iterate that. And as I was talking about a lot earlier, Josh, I'm not sure if you were here, but I talk a lot about collaging. And what I'll do is I'll take a bunch of photos and I'll collage those photos into a new scene. And then traditionally before AI, I would take those photos, collage them into a new scene, recolor the whole thing, and then illustrate it, then illustrate that photo collage. Now with AI, one of the really exciting things that I can do is I can make a photo collage, then I can put it into AI and, do an image to image version of it with a low denoise rate. And denoise means essentially like, how much do you want to deviate from this image? Are you just upscaling it, or are you letting AI kind of change it a little bit? But what's fun when you have composition that you've made with a collage and then you throw it through AI, it can kind of like bring those weird janky edges, or if like a couple of your buildings are a little bit off perspective, it can like smooth out some of your perspective for you. And like things that manually would just take me fucking hours to do. And it's like, well, now I just like, this is still my composition. This is still my idea, but you can just go through and like reiterate that. So then you could take your collage composition, run it through AI, get it to make an output that is a little bit more like logical in some of its like angles and illogical in a lot of other things, which is a total bitch when you're illustrating stuff because you have like wires that go from the wrong perspective to the wrong perspective. But if you look at my old pre-AI work, I have plenty of illogical shapes and forms in there anyways, because I'm just mashing together photos that aren't actually at the same distance away, or there's always like illogical things in my art anyways. And art doesn't need to be totally logical. But then what's fun is like you have your composition and then you can just like iterate 1,000 versions of that and have it kind of like fluidly like move maybe a little bit more away, or maybe, you're like, well, I want some snow here, or I want this or that there. And being able to play with those dynamics is so fun. And Josh, one thing that I want to ask you is, do you have AI art? I kind of hate the term AI art in the same way that I hate the term NFT artist, because I think it's just art. You don't say acrylic art or whatever medium you're using often. But do you have kind of like a way that you like do as an artist, when you make something really dope, you get this deep core satisfaction. And there's some art that I've made with AI where if I'm leaning too much on the AI model, I don't feel quite as connected to it. But then there's other times where I still feel like fully connected to it, like I would my other art. And I think what my struggle with AI is finding the joy of creation sometimes, because sometimes it can get a little blurry there. So like, do you find that you ride those lines at all on like, oh, I feel as connected to this as something I would have coiled in? And is it do we need to suffer? Do we need to go through physical pain and torment to actually create art that we can feel proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been the struggle for 30 years for me is, trying to find that needle in a haystack. And I've gotten my workflows to generate such unexpected results that, it's been about a year now that I've been deep diving into Comfy UI and Stable Diffusion, and now Flux. I've folded Flux pretty heavily into
Same.
my workflow right now. And some of the stuff that it's making is like, holy shit. Um, But, I think at the end of the day, for the past 30 years, I've been obsessed with this, like reaching into the magic bag, right? So you've got this bag, you stick your hand into it and you pull something out in your hope that, it tickles that thing that, you were talking about. And I, over this past year, have gotten so good with creating this sort of scenario where those kind of events that can happen. I literally can't wait to get into my studio every morning, because I'm going to look at 1,000 images that this, Linux box has been churning out images while I've been sleeping. And there's enough of that magic happening that I'm looking for that, like, holy shit, I didn't expect this to happen moment. And I've gotten into a place where that happens enough that, it's become this like really interesting process of like, okay, like, cool. Now, how do I direct this scenario? And, again, I don't want to pitch, this is your stage. I don't want to pitch a project that I'm working on, but,
Do it,
uh,
man.
I got this really crazy, crazy idea, which is, first of all, I'm a Linux guy, so I love Linux boxes. I run, Ubuntu server command line. I literally have an Ubuntu box here that runs a 4090. It's got like the greatest graphics card in the world, and the computer runs command line, which is some sort of sick joke, which is hilarious. This Ubuntu box runs what's called Olama and OpenWebUI, which allows me to run local LLMs like Gemini and like Llama and now DeepSeek. So I have this thing where I asked the LLM, I said, hey, I want you to write a story. And I'm going to give you just kind of like what the parameters of the story are, but treat it like a comic book. And I want you to write the very first page. And so this LLM generates the very first page. It's just text. I then take that text and put it into this workflow, and then it generates a bunch of images. And then again, I'm on that hunt for this kind of like magical image that, will possibly occur. I then take that image and give it back to the LLM, because the LLM can, you can ask it like, what do you see in this photo? So I give it back to the LLM and I say, what do you see in this photo? And what do you think happens next? So I have AI writing the story as it goes, and it's generating images as it goes. And so, I've shared it with a couple of friends, and they've just said, "Well, what's the story going to be about?" And I'm like, "Fuck if I know. I'm not writing this story."
But
AI.
but you're choosing, but you're picking which
Yeah.
winning
So
part goes
yeah,
forward. So like,
yeah, a
it's,
million percent. So yeah,
it's
I
like
am
a
controlling the.
Schrodinger's situation or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the only control that I have in the entire process is me picking the image that I like. But then again, I take that image and I give it back to the LLM and I say, "Fuck man, tell me what happens next." And
Well,
so right now, AI is completely writing and illustrating the story, and I'm just making decisions on which images are interesting. So as long as I do those kind of things, um, I'm I'm not bored, because I don't think I'm aimlessly creating content just to create content. Like I have an idea, I've flushed out a concept, I've, spent like a year writing this workflow. So, as long as you take those kind of creative steps and creative executions, I think this project probably is going to go on for quite some time because I'm excited for each iteration of the outcome.
so don't you think that, like the classic argument, like somebody looks at a Jackson Pollock and goes, well, like, I could have made that. And then it's the answer to that is, but you didn't. You know what I mean? And so I think with AI, with a lot of art, you'll have a lot of people saying, well, like, I could just make that in AI. But, but we're looking at what I did and you didn't. And I think there's now this new era of like where I think like AI art could be looked at like abstract art, where it's like, well, anybody could throw paint at a canvas, but why am I here for this one? And
Yeah, and here's the thing: if everyone's going to have a snap judgment about like, oh, AI is not hard or AI is easy, clearly has not spent any time with AI
man,
because,
I
like I
spent,
said, man, like that
oh,
your hyper project, like
I spend as
getting
much
to that point
time
was not easy. Yeah, a million percent.
and I spend as much time like when I use AI to composite an illustration. So like I'll sometimes use AI and then I'll still fully illustrate the piece. So like what you're looking at is fully illustrated by hand in my traditional style. But like if I'm using AI to composite that background, that's not saving me fucking time. That's letting me do other ideas or work from like other perspectives that I maybe don't have like the right photo reference to get that exact angle. But I'm resolving fucking weird windows and weird shit and like there's AI fucking sludge everywhere. And so like there's still a ton of work going into it. And the one thing you were saying about like, you know, getting it to write something, then getting an image, then getting it to read the image. I've been really loving doing that as well, where like I'll have a photograph I took on the street. I'll run that photograph into ChatGPT and be like, describe this photograph as a Mad Dog Jones illustration. It'll give me a prompt describing that photograph, and then I'll use that prompt for the image to image generation to work off of that. So it like
Man,
it
we
has
gotta
it's
we gotta pass more files back and forth. I've built that completely into Comfy UI, where you just attach an image into Comfy, and it will run the LLM and prompt generation directly into Comfy, and you can completely cut out
yeah, God,
ChatGPT. But anyway,
save me these steps,
yeah,
man. Save me these steps.
yeah,
And it's funny because like as technical as I am, and I've installed Comfy UI from like GitHub, and I'm certainly technologically capable, but then sometimes like there's like another level of technology that I'm like, whoa, I'm a fucking idiot. But like compared to like all my quote unquote normie friends, I'm like the techno god. But then like compared to you, I'm like, oh man, I don't know shit.
yeah. We'll pass some JSON files back and forth. I'll save you some time. There's
Sound,
like
sounds
it's
good.
this is what happens when you get like really nerdy and really obsessive. You start looking at
Yeah.
every node and what does every node do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think I figured out a way to kind of make this my own. And I think just to reinforce the point that you made, which is image to image is where it's at. Like either training your own LoRa's or using things like IP adapters to do style and composition transfers based on your own work unlocks this new way of working in AI that I think a lot of people are
And
missing.
and it also like feeds your soul with the art you're creating more. When I'm working with my own Laura's and my own models, I feel a deeper satisfaction of the art that's being created than I would otherwise. And I think that that's also really important, especially when like, you know, for anybody that has kids and like a next generation of artists coming up, I think there's a massive challenge. You know, Josh, we're solidified artists at this point. We already knew who we were. We had our true north before using these tools, but I don't know how I would have gotten the skill set I have had I had access to this the whole time. So I think that's a really compelling challenge that young people and parents are going to face when learning and teaching art coming into the future.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Hey, man, I'm going to bail. I just want
Yeah,
to
I
drop
think,
back down to
yeah,
the audience and give people space to chat with you. I feel like I'm dominating too much, and I want to
no,
step aside and let other
this
people
is
chat with you. I
exactly what I
love you,
wanted,
man,
Josh. Yeah,
and
love you
I'll
too.
share some files with you later.
Cool. We'll talk soon, man.
This was
All right, buddy.
amazing. Thanks, Josh.
Nuck.
Yes, yeah, that was awesome. I mean, I think we could all learn so much from that. And again, using AI as a tool, using AI to tell your own story through your own lens, that's something that I've been experimenting with. So yeah, that was a wonderful conversation there. And yeah, if anyone has any other questions for Mad Dog Jones, let me know and I can bring you up on stage.
And what's our timeline looking today? Are we going, is it a 2 hour session or is it?
So we're at our time here. So I mean, I don't want to take any more of your time up. So I mean, if there's a couple questions, I know people have been tuning in this entire time, so definitely want to give them the opportunity if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Anybody has any questions, um, wants to berate me for any reason? Um, yeah, sweet. Well, Nuck, man, it's really cool, getting to chat, man. You open up a really cool conversation floor to talk. And, it's really sweet. And, shout out Talvir too. Always working on really cool shit. Feel like I've known him forever. Arson, Emlo, Quantum, Andrew, Nicole, E-Dog, Dexler, Space Dust, B-Dubs. Thanks for listening, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Um, I'm constantly working and constantly trying to be as active as I can on social media without fucking driving myself insane. It's a constant balance out here trying to exist as an artist. And I really focus on not burning out. It's an underrated thing for artists. And I think that we live in such a fast moving world that, um, making sure you let artists exist on a healthy level is really important. So I encourage everybody to, you know, take your breaks as you need them. It's it's a marathon, you know. I plan on being here doing this stuff until I'm toothless and being uploaded somewhere. So it's it's a real honor to get to do this professionally, and really fun to get to chat with everybody.
This was amazing. Thank you again so much for doing this. And yeah, +1 to that. Definitely take the space you need for the whole Web3 world. It moves so fast. I mean, we're
Oh
we're
yeah.
all human. So give
Yeah.
yourself time, give yourself space, touch grass, go on some walks, connect with loved ones. All that stuff is so important just for the longevity of you and also just for the space to continue to thrive. So thank you again to everybody that joined us here today. I will get this recording up on YouTube as soon as possible. And then I will watch Akira tonight and I will give you guys some updates as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Let me know. I'm
thank
excited.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Mad Dog Jones. We will catch you on the internet. Everyone, goodbye for now.
Later.